Nice to meet you, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm now in the city of Eilat, as you can see right behind me. Not in Jerusalem, but I live in Jerusalem for the last 7 years. And basically, I founded Israeli-Palestinian grassroots organization that support the human rights of both Jews and Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, and the restoration of Israeli sovereignty to Judea and Samaria, and inclusion of Palestinians as part of Israel. And we do it by connecting people from the grassroots level, by doing activities called Cleaning the Hate, which is something that connects people from various and especially hostile backgrounds to meet with each other, to engage with each other, to come together to the same place and basically look at each other from the eye-to-eye level while we pick up trash and give joint respect to something which is much bigger than all of us together, which is our land, the Holy Land, whether we're going to call it Israel or Palestine, but it's our Mother Earth, it's our motherland. And what we do in this activities, we basically bring the people that live the heart of the conflict, in the heart of the conflict, the heart of the story of their people, of their communities. And by that, we're basically bringing people who are absent from the process of peace building between Jews and Palestinians. And this is something that creates and will create a lot of change. Currently, we are in a situation that after we had a war in Gaza 2 months ago, there's still a lot of unclarity and uncertainty. And, it's like we came back in a regression to position that we were, let's say, after the war in Gaza, which is basically more or less when I started my activism. And speaking about my activism, Habayit is not only myself. Habayit is also people like Rudy Rushman, was now, unfortunately, if you know the news, is now in the Nigerian detention because he wanted to make a documentary about the Jewish community over there. It's something that I don't want to get into too much, but if you want to ask questions, please go ahead about this. We also have the head or the international spokesperson of the Jewish community in Hebron, Ishai Fleischer, peace activist and teacher like Yehuda Cohen from Beitel, and many, many, many Palestinians who unfortunately cannot be identified and cannot go in public because they are suffering under the Palestinian Authority that do not allow anyone who have different opinions from the regime or the PA to express themselves in public. So we have to keep them on low, even though we have one Palestinian teacher named Raji Sabatin, who is teaching Arabic to the people in the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. By the way, if someone have a problem with me calling Judea and Samaria, it's okay. The West Bank, Judea and Samaria, it's all the same. I don't think also that in terms of pursuing peace or striving to peace, terminology is something that we need to put all our efforts on, because I respect people from the other side that call all of the land Palestine. And if they respect people like myself, they call all of the land Israel. Now, I don't know how much you guys are into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but as you know, it's a very, very delicate conflict, very sensitive, a lot of opinions, a lot of efforts. And what we try to do in Habayit is basically promote more of a process rather than a vision, because what's going to be in the future is very complicated and very, very hard to predict. But we strive for unity, but the process that we are doing is process of inclusivity and localness, that we give the exclusivity in the process for people who are either Israeli or Palestinians, and people from the international arena. And I know that you guys are from the UN, basically. We don't allow people who are not from either Jewish or Palestinians or Israelis or people who have family roots to our land to have a role as a decision makers. Of course, anyone can support, anyone can be on the side and look, but for the healthy dynamics of letting something grow from our land, it's something that we really emphasize on. And I hope you understand that, because foreign interference is not good in any conflict. And I think that it's something that was done in the wrong way, with so much influence and so much, for example, funds from the international community, whether it's pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian or anti-Israeli or anti-Palestinian. If it's not going to emerge from here, from the land of Israel or Palestine, from both people and having different dynamics to grow here together and live here together, which is our vision, is unification between Israelis and Palestinians, then I don't think that there's going to be a solution to the conflict. So what made me start my activism was basically after the war in Gaza, back in 2014. I wrote a post on Facebook that I said basically proper guidelines that I support right now, that the solution should be unification and some kind of a federal model to be added to the solution, and that the peace ceremony should be on Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And from that point on, my first Palestinian partner, who's not my partner anymore, but we are still friends, John Davis from Ramallah, contacted me. And from 5 minutes, we talked for 5 hours. And from that on, the meeting, the face-to-face encounter, and talking to the other and hearing his story without any filters, without any political agendas, without any media, just, people to people. That's how Habayit started. And that's what we do until today, and put the focus on this thing of making, human connections between different and especially hostile communities, and bring people together to build connections so that when time will be right, they will already establish connections in neighboring and very close proximity communities that one day, hopefully, will create a process that's gonna lead also to the emergence of peace in the political level. And again, what we do is basic 3 things: meetings, cleanups, cleaning the hate, where we basically take Jews, Palestinians, people that look at all of the land as their homeland, and we take it from 3 levels. We take like people that come to the cleanups from the angle of environmental awareness, which is the humane universalist approach. People that come from the nationalistic place, which is, this is our homeland, this is our motherland, and people that come from the religious or belief approach that view the land as the Holy Land, which it is. And the action is the same action: picking up trash together, giving up respect to the land together. And this is what we do to build unity, not from uniformity, but from differences. 3 different approaches, same action, and magical good things happen. And I don't know if you guys have the chance to see what we do on social media, especially in the home JLM, in Instagram. So you can see also what we try to bring to you from the field, so you can feel what we have on the field. And we have a lot of videos that try to say or try to paint the big picture. And I must say, this is not the big picture, because we have a lot of talks and a lot of meetings with also a lot of people that cannot be in these meetings because of the censorship from the PA, and that because we fear for their security. And we just try to bring you different voices and different approaches about peacemaking, peace building, and making good connection between people who are now hostile and now enemies. And we also have to understand that currently Israelis and Palestinians are enemies. So in order to change that, we need to recognize the reality, advance forward, that the ally, the future ally, will be someone that we know in advance that we're going to have different approach, different beliefs, and different ideas how to create peace, but only from understanding that we are different and unique and not all the same. This is where unity and also equality under the law, I hope, will emerge. So with that short introduction, I hope I didn't bore you guys too much. I will open it up for questions, and Mauricio and the hosts, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Awesome, Mr. Inon. So guys, we would love to just open the floor to have a little discussion and a little bit of, a conversation upon this subject. So I would love to just start by asking you guys what you guys think, or what have you guys heard from this conflict that Mr. Inon here is truly an expert on, and he's really making it his life purpose to be able to unite the people that reside in this area of the world. So I don't know, perhaps Valentina, can you tell us a little bit about what you know?
Yeah. Well, I know that both Israelis and Palestinians are fighting for the Holy Land. So yeah, there's a conflict, a very strong conflict there because of the Holy Land, and it's really sad to know that.
Okay, Santiago.
I've investigated a little bit. Like, I'm definitely not an expert like how you are, Inon, but I still know a little bit that is that the Palestinians and the Israelites have been fighting for the Holy Land for a lot of time, but this is not recent. And if you look at it from a like historic point of view and even like religious point of view, you can see that they have been fighting since Abraham, because Abraham had Ishmael and Isaac, so then that's Islam, and then Isaac and Abraham is like the Judaism. And then ever since, they've been having this conflict because of religious purposes, and also because of like how you were saying about the people who live there, like they know that it's their homeland, and then they're fighting about this and they haven't been able to like negotiate properly.
Okay, thank you, Santiago. So, I would love to just hear to your input in this brief explanation that Valentina and Santiago just gave. And I would love to know how close or how far from the truth is this. A very brief overview. Is this truly all the details that we should bear in mind when we're trying to speak about this subject? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends, from what point in history we begin. And I think Valentina mentioned correctly that there is a rift between Isaac and Ishmael, and that's true. But the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is also has religious aspect to it, it's not really that we are fighting against Ishmael. We are more fighting against, how can I say, against. It's like nationalism and religion and humanity, universalism all mixed together. It's not only about religion, even though I believe personally that the main root of the conflict is about religion. Um, and yeah, I think that Jews and the Arabs used to live good together before the state of Israel, but yet and still, in some cases, Jews were persecuted in Arab areas. And I don't want to get into politics too much and too much into history, but very important point about this conflict. It's very important to understand where it comes from, what are the roots for the conflict, whether it's what Valentina mentioned, and regarding Isaac, Ishmael, 2,000, 3,000 years of the kingdom of Israel, or the Islamic conquest. It doesn't matter. But what is important for us to do in terms of making peace is to focus more on the future, the present and the future, rather than focusing too much on the past, which none of us can ever change.
Okay, that is amazing. Thank you so much for that answer. I would love to carry on asking you guys, what do you guys think in terms of peace? What suggestions have you guys heard, or international cooperations that are happening in terms of the Israel-Palestine conflict? What specific things do you think we could do in order for this conflict to be resolved? I know you guys have an input on that, perhaps. Vanessa, I don't know if you have anything to say right there.
I don't know. I maybe think that I don't know a lot of the topic about. I'm not an expert, But maybe I think that one of the reasons that we have a lot of problems in the world is that we don't like have the respect to the people that think different to us. We and maybe I think that one of the solutions is that make that the society lives and as or sorry or learn how to respect to others and like to have like I don't know, like a normal convivence without the problem. I know that it's bigger the problem, but I don't know how other solutions maybe that can we use or to take a part of.
All right. Awesome. Valentina.
I think this problem, as Inon said, it was mainly caused by religion. So it's because maybe of the connection between religion and politics. So I think there should be kind of a gap between them, so we can be peaceful in Earth and be better as a society.
Okay, very good. Salva, do you want to mention something here?
I am not very informed in this topic, so I have nothing to say.
Okay, fair enough. So I would love to address you back in and with this question, in the sense that, you know, perhaps the Western world's not really understanding as much the problem that's going on in there. And I know sometimes there's plenty of forces from Western countries or Western civilization that's just trying to put an agenda forward that perhaps is not even in the best interests of the people that live in there. So how do you think this sort of, you know, international cooperations could end up actually in not being a pro, but actually a con when you're trying to find peace for this whole conflict?
Okay, first, Mauricio, I want to address to something that someone here said, that because the conflict has involvement of religion and politics, therefore it should be separated. In this thing, I think that we are missing, you know, the solution, the guidelines to the solution. Because I think that we got so much used to separate between this and that, but you know, it's all intertwined. I mean, you cannot have the yin without the yang. You cannot have light, and you cannot have, you know, light without darkness. I mean, everything has its own place. And I think that here in this conflict, because so much with political emotion, religious emotions and religious beliefs, and many also people that live in this land are people that believe in God, believe in Hashem, believe in Allah. Therefore, you must have a combination. I'm not saying that all of it should be religion, but you need to have also to give also space to the religion to be part of the solution, not to put it aside from the political vision. At least that's what I believe in. That's what I think. Now, regarding what you said, Mauricio, I really do think that, you know, people that want this conflict to end, the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians to end, if they are from the outside, they should be pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian, not anti-Israeli and pro-Palestinian, or pro-Israeli and anti-Palestinian, but to be pro both, or just step away and don't make us have more fight with each other while people from the outside sit and watch us kill each other and just shedding blood. And again, it connects to the thing that I said in the beginning, that I think that this conflict should be with as less as foreign involvement or interference from the outside, and let us, Israelis and Palestinians, do our business together and create the dynamics that will allow, hopefully soon, to have unity. And unity also cannot come from uniformity. So that's what I have to say.
That's amazing. And it's very interesting what you're saying. There's a saying, you know, that says that you can't fit everyone with a small sized t-shirt, you know? And I think that relates a little bit to what you're saying, in the sense that it's super important to take into account all of the needs of the people that are in there. And I think it's gonna be really, really hard if you're in a mansion in Washington, knowing whether it is a good idea or not for them, you know. So I believe a lot in what you're saying, but I would also love to ask in terms of solutions that have happened in the past. Can you just name a few of the solutions that perhaps have been attempted and perhaps failed because of some specific reason? What are these reasons that they failed? I don't know, just I don't know if you have a little bit of information in that sense.
Right. I mean, there was only one solution on the table so far when it comes to serious diplomatic attempts, which is the two-state solution or the division of the land. And all of these solutions, all of these attempts failed. Since the Peel Commission, the 1947 decision to divide the land into Jewish and Arab state, and so on and so forth. The 1993 Oslo agreements, Oslo Accords that established or tried to establish a Palestinian state gradually, and the Annapolis and many white plantation initiative. Many initiatives were tried and failed. And why? Well, I think it's mainly because the people themselves that live in this land view all of the land as one unit that cannot be divided. From what I know, from what I see, and from what I feel from my Palestinian friends, not even one single one of them. You look at part of the land as Palestine. They look at all of the land as Palestine, something which I respect. But on the other hand, there's a lot of Jews. By the way, I'm Jewish. They don't view all of the land as Israel, although the heartland of Israel is called Judea, or the part where the kingdom of Judea 3,000 years ago was there. And once we do not look at the same unit as a whole thing, as a one indivisible unit, then we cannot prove to the other that, I don't know if you guys know about the King Solomon trial, where there were two mothers that tried to prove that the baby belonged to the real mother. And King Solomon took a sword and said, I will cut the baby in half. And therefore, the real mother was portrayed as the mother that said, I'd rather give up on the baby, that the baby will live, but will be whole, will not be cut into half and live. And therefore, she was the real mother. So I think that, again, all the initiatives to divide the land have failed, and they will continue to fail, in my opinion. And I think that the only solution, not the only solution, because I don't want to sound dogmatic. There could be, various solutions and various things in the future. But I believe in one single state, and I believe it should be Israel, to basically include the Palestinians as citizens or residents, and also establish a federalist canton system that will fit both Jews and Palestinians, added to the state of Israel, and basically provide equal human rights and equal political opportunities to Jews and non-Jews alike, so we can all live together in the same land without wall checkpoints or military rule.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. I think it's very thorough, and it's very interesting to listen to that, because perhaps we're very accustomed to just solving problems. Like you guys remember yesterday's exercise on negotiation. Probably the first thing you guys thought was, okay, it's $2. We'll just go 1-on-1. But perhaps that's not actually the best solution in many of the cases, So I would just love to encourage you guys to reflect on that, because I think it's very wise and very interesting what you're saying, Inon. And I would love also to ask you just a little bit about how life is in there, because I believe it's very different to what everyone in this room is really accustomed. And you were talking about military checkpoints in certain areas and all this. Could you explain us a little bit about the reality of what it is to live in under this circumstances and situation?
Okay, this is a question that mainly should be asked to Palestinians because they live under both the Israeli military rule and also under the PA, which is a dictatorship. It's a body that doesn't give their own residents human rights. Just recently, there were a case of killing of a Palestinian that criticized the Palestinian Authority, Nizar Banat. I don't know if you guys heard, but what's happening in basically the West Bank, it's or where the Palestinian people live, is that they live under a system which is Israeli, that is basically imposing on them military law. They're not residents or citizens of Israel. They're basically under a different status than the state of Israel as a result of the Oslo Accords, by the way. And these people basically, in a lot of times, cannot go freely to the other areas in Israel, like um, if people know the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, Palestinians need to have special permit to go inside Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa. So they are deprived from freedom of movement to the other areas in the land. And in their area, basically they can move freely, but again, there's a separation here. And also on the other hand, we as Jews, mainly Jews, not Israeli residents. Israeli citizens who are Arab can go freely to anywhere in the country, also to the Palestinian areas. But Israeli Jews are not allowed to get into Palestinian areas, and in fear for their safety or for they're not basically welcome there. And also myself as a Jew, if I go to the West Bank and I don't talk in Hebrew and I don't go with kippah, even though I don't have kippah, I don't show out that I'm Israeli, that I'm Jewish. And it's also another thing that need to be worked on and figured out, because I don't believe that before a Jew will be able to live and walk freely and speak Hebrew in his mother language in a Palestinian area, there's going to be any peace. And that's basically the reality. And the reality also is that, again, I'm being fair and honest. Israel make a lot of wrongdoings to Palestinians. I'm not speaking about Palestinians who are enemies of Israel, who are terrorists, who want to kill innocent women and children. Talking about the vast majority of Palestinians, who people basically live. I have a lot of friends who are Palestinians that live and just try to make ends meet in Israel or in general. And these people basically are not are deprived from basic human rights. And I put the criticism on both the Israeli and the Palestinian Authority. And again, we need the vision, because this situation needs to change. It's too long.
Of course, it's very interesting what you're mentioning, and I truly think that it's it's a very different reality and circumstance to the one we're accustomed in many of the countries that we have around here. And I'd love to hear from you guys, what does it make you feel when you listen to this sort of things? How would you imagine yourselves living under these circumstances? And what do you think you guys would do in that sense? I'd love to hear about that. Perhaps I see Teodolina is having a little bit of some thoughts going on in her head. So Teodolina?
Well, I was thinking that it would be hard to get used to that, because I mean, I think my lifestyle is quite different to that. And so I guess, I mean, it's a whole different world, and it's hard for me to to understand that these two dimensions are in the same world. It's really, I mean, difficult for me to think about that.
Very good. Thank you, Teodolina. I feel Ignacio has something to say about this.
Can I ask a question that I have?
Of course, you can ask a question.
Okay, so for Mr. Inon, do you believe that the socioeconomic disparities between the Israelis and Palestinians, as we know that Israel is a much more developed state with a much more higher GDP per capita, do you believe that those socioeconomic disparities has increased the tension between both populations?
I don't know. It's an interesting question because the gap between Israel and the Palestinian Authority is about 10 times more wealth in Israel. Um, I don't know if it increased the tension or increased the gap, because before Israel ruled in 1967 it used to be a Jordanian rule for 1967. I think that this area was even much, much, much less developed as after Israel recaptured it, we regained its sovereignty on, regained its control. Um, I think that it needs to be a process of, Israel need to be more generous and develop the Palestinian economy in order, in favor that it will be part of Israel. Um, but there's always tension between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. But both of them want to preserve the status quo, both the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority. And I think that who's benefit from this situation is mostly the Palestinian Authority and the personnel over there. I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the leadership, because it's very paying off to be paid salaries and have an office and have a nice car. And on the other hand, Israel doesn't want to rule over the Palestinian people and absorb them into the system, the political system. So it's a problem.
Very, very interesting. Okay, Ignacio, I don't know if that clears your question. If you have any follow-up questions or anything else you'd like to add.
No, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Amazing. That's great. Guys, just to remind you, if you have any questions through this conversation, you can pop them into chat. You can raise your hand. Feel free to just speak out, just comment a little bit. We're here to actually have conversations about this subjects of crucial importance. And of course, I think it's very enriching for your own growth to understand the different situations that are happening globally. Not everyone is in the same reality as you are. I wouldn't say it's a better or worse reality. It's just circumstantial, I would say. And I believe both have their pros and their cons. Of course, some of them are a little bit riskier than others, but without, of course, discouraging anyone's reality and being very respectful with that. So my next question in terms of this whole situation would go in terms of, we've spoken a little bit about the history, the solutions that have been proposed. We've spoken a little bit about the two-state solution and how we don't believe that's the great solution, in the sense that nobody wants to part the baby in two, as you explained it with your analogy with, that story. But I'd love to understand a little bit more from a personal standpoint for yourself. What do you think are the main challenges that lie ahead in terms of a, let's say, shift in the mindset of these societies to come together? That would be I believe, one of the biggest questions in that sense. So
yeah, indeed, it's a big question mark. I think that the main obstacle is psychological. Main obstacle is about trust. You cannot create any kind of peace or any kind of solution or any kind of political system, whether it's one state or two state, without having trust between two sides. And we have so much mistrust between us, between Israelis and Palestinians, or Jews and non-Jews, especially in the last 2 months, where we had clashes also inside the mixed cities, mixed Arab and Jewish cities inside Israel. It very, very much increased the mistrust. But only about 1 year ago, many Israelis were very astounded to find out that 5 Arab countries made peace agreements with Israel from the outside. So it's a matter of ups and downs. Sometimes we have this, sometimes we have that. But again, if we're not going to create any trust and also loyalty between us and mutual bonding between Jews and Palestinians, there's not going to be any solution. So I think also psychologically, it's also a lot about ego. I think that people have naturally, we all as human beings, we have our ego. But when our ego is so big and we're so centered in ourselves, without even trying to look and have a broader perspective, and therefore to understand the other, where the other is coming from, what is their beliefs, how do they see the world, what it is about Palestinians understanding Israelis, and Israelis understanding Palestinians. So when we take people to clean up trash, it's like a psychological exercise to remove the ego, to bow down to something bigger than you. So yeah, I think it's a lot of psychological barriers, and I think they can be fixed relatively quickly nowadays because we have social media, and it's a platform that wasn't existing until 10 or 20 years ago. But as it can be used for good, it can be also used for bad to spread lies, fake news, hate, stuff like that. But I think that the foundations are already here, but it's up to the people to take responsibility and to think outside of the box how we can unite in a way that's going to be agreeable by the majority of both sides, and therefore to move forward.
That is very interesting. Valentina, do you want to comment anything?
Yeah, I have a question. Have you ever had personally a hate comment to you because of your activism?
Hate comment or hate something like in real life?
More like a comment on your activism.
Okay, I can say both, but it's all good. Of course, I had a lot of comments on my activism, a lot of hate comments. Actually, they were growing less and less and less the more time went. But in my real life, I never had hate comments from Palestinians in my real life. Never had any problem with the Palestinian. I hope that I never will. Nothing too serious, of course. But I did have friends, Israeli friends, that because, when you do something with Palestinians or with Arabs, you can be associated or labeled as a traitor, as a lefty, over liberal. I mean, stuff like that. That, it's a very sensitive issue. So even some friends who were not very close, but some friends, left or broken the friendship between us when there was hostility or tension between Israelis and Palestinians. So stuff like that happens sometimes, but it's part of life, fortunately.
Okay, Valentina, does that clear your question? Is there any follow-ups you might want to do?
He answered my question. Thank you.
Awesome. That's great. Once again, guys, remind you, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to do so. So carrying on in terms of I think that's a very interesting question, what you say, Valentina. In terms of the hate comments, what do you think it's or has been your own personal biggest challenge to get to where you are today in terms of the activism that you're doing and the work that you're doing? I believe it's very powerful and it's really something to talk about. But personally, sometimes we talk a lot about how we want to change on the world or how we want to truly have better societies and all this, but going from saying it to actually doing something about it is quite a tough step. So what would you recommend or what did you do in your personal experience to truly break off with those maybe even excuses at some point and start creating a true change?
Basically, any opportunity that I had, I went on it. I didn't wait too much. I didn't think too much. Just in the beginning of my activism, I wanted to learn. I wanted to be real. I wanted to be present on the ground. So any opportunity I had, whether it's gonna be to talk with someone on the phone or to meet with someone over coffee or to do a project in Jericho, or to do a project in Tel Aviv. I didn't really care. I didn't really think too much. Just went and do. And, with the notion that I'm going to make also mistakes, but I need to learn from them. Need to learn from the experience. So my recommendation for anyone that wants to be involved in activism, definitely do. Don't ask too much questions. Be also balanced. Don't do hasty stuff that's gonna cost you with things, with either your physic or economic or mental. But simply do, and have also someone that's gonna advise you. Don't do things all by yourself. Have someone also that gonna be someone who can listen to you, and you can listen to them, and you trust them, and make also a lot of brainstorms with people. Be creative. I hope that I answered the question. And for me also, I have a lot of barriers that are bigger than what I can handle. Whether it's economic, whether it's because I want to do things. I want to bring Palestinians inside Israel proper, where the Israeli rule is, and I cannot do it right now. So a lot of things that are both technical and financial are very problematic right now. But maybe it's a sign from God that now it's not the right time to do stuff. And I really believe in being patient. I really believe that when time comes, things happen. The human being need to do, we as human beings need to do our own efforts to promote something. But we need also to believe that there's something above us that guides the events in the world. This is how I view the world, basically.
That's amazing. That's very powerful as well. So Mr. Inon, I'd just love to ask you a question. I know we've spoken about this briefly beforehand. And I know we're not too much into getting, outer regions and people from the outside, actually making calls for what's Israeli and Palestinian. Nevertheless, I would love to ask you, in terms of, we have a very Latin American community here in the current call. So in terms of our countries, we have people from Argentina, we have people from Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, I believe Mexico as well, Puerto Rico as well. I don't know if I mentioned Puerto Rico already. What could we do from our stance to improve the situation instead of making it, way worse than it already is?
I think it's very simple. I think you guys should be in the mindset of being either don't interfere with the conflict, stay away, and especially stay away from something which is not related to you as a person. But if you are wanting to be involved with the conflict, be pro-Israeli and be pro-Palestinian. I know it's not easy because Israel is the strong side and the Palestinians are the weak side. But if we are going to be pro and anti one of them, it's still gonna create, conflict. So again, I suggest people will be basically to be on the side and know their place, not to interfere in something that they don't understand. And if you want to be part of the solution, also think about something big. Think about something that should be inspiring for humanity. I know that a lot of you guys are Christian and believe in Jesus and believe in the New Testament and also the Old Testament. But this process of peace between Israelis and Palestinians should be what is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 2, for example, or chapter 11. Should be something, the Temple Mount should be a place where peace will spread from Jerusalem to the world. So we don't need the influence from outside of the world towards Israel or Jerusalem. We need it to be the opposite, from Jerusalem, inspiration to humanity. Basically, that cannot be done without some kind of unification definitely without an alliance between Jews and non-Jews living from the river to the sea.
That is very interesting and very eye-opening, I think, as well. I think we could draw some lines between the concepts that we were studying in past days and the trainings and all of this about truly looking for a win-win and not a win-lose nor a neutral standpoint, just truly looking for the best for all of the involved parts in that sense. So that is amazing. That is truly great to listen to. It's been fun to hear Santiago so silently lately. Do you have anything to comment, Santiago?
No, just that I find this topic really interesting, and I'm just putting a lot of attention to like the event right now here with Inon, because it's really complex. Like I have investigated a little bit, but not too much to like have a complete understanding of the topic. And now I'm finding out that it's not just like about the land, it also has like religion and also politics. And I agree with what you said, Mao, about finding a win-win situation.
Awesome.
And by the way, I appreciate your honesty and your humbleness. You know, it's not really easy to say that I don't understand in something and therefore I'm not gonna relate to that. So I think it's really impressive and respectful.
That's
Thank you.
great. Awesome. Thank you, Santiago. All right, everyone. Do we have any more questions around? Anything you guys would like to ask to Mr. Inon? Anything else? No? We good so far? All right, everyone. All right, Mr. Inon, I would just love to hand you. Well, we have a question from Dolina.
I don't know if somebody asked you this before, because at first I had Wi-Fi problems, but I find like your attitude towards this issue very inspiring, and I wanted to ask you what drew you to this and what made you realize that you wanted to fight for this cause, and not for, like from an activist, and from that point.
Well, I think it's a lot of coincidences that happened to me in a short time that made me realize and decide that that this is what I want to do in my life. And it involved also politics and religion, friendship, love, basically the willing to, to feel something that I know in my gut that I'm doing something that it's true, that it's that I'm passionate about. And I will not tell you the whole story because it will take you about half an hour. But again, it was a combination of the war that started in 2014 and meeting a Palestinian and understanding the Palestinian story, not without filters, just as friend to friend or human to human, and doing things on the ground and see and feel and experience something very different from what I saw on TV.
Amazing. Santiago, do you have a question?
Yes, Inon, what do you think was like the main detonant, I think you could say, like about this conflict, at least recently?
The main what?
Like the main, not cause, but like the detonant.
Like, I would say like a key moment that really
Yeah.
shaped the conflict.
You
Yeah.
mean how the conflict started, or what was the most important point in the conflict?
Yeah.
Um, I think that the most important point in the conflict is it's actually two. It's 1948, of course, where Israel was established and the Palestinians had their catastrophe. The second one is 1967, where Israel recaptured lands that are very important to the Jewish people, but most of them were with Palestinians. And however, Israel didn't take responsibility over these areas, and also regaining very, very important places for the Jewish people, which is the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron, Nablus. That's basically the two main points, points in time.
Awesome. And can you develop a little bit on what happened in 2014 with the war?
2014 basically was a war that escalated from the kidnapping of 3 Israeli Jewish boys and their murder, and after that the retaliation and kidnapping and murder of 1 Palestinian boy and burning him alive. After 2014, after these 2 cases, slowly but gradually, Israel, the state of Israel and Hamas escalated and started to fire. There was a war that occurred for 50 days, where almost, I think, 2,000 Palestinians were killed in Gaza, and about 100 Israelis were killed. Yeah, that's what you see on TV and how you feel the pictures. I mean, when I see dead kids, it doesn't matter for me if they are Palestinian or Israeli. And seeing dead kids made me very, very emotional until this day. It doesn't matter for me which kids, but again, these scenes from the TV really affected me, and I think it also something that caused me to be more active, to be very active in this peacemaking.
It is very tough to listen to that, and it's even tough to put in words, like how personally I feel about just thinking about another human being, as you say, not thinking, just without any labels, without saying he's Palestinian, he's Israeli, he's I don't know, African American, he's whatever, he's a human. And parting from that point, I believe that's the precise thing that we might lose sight at some point, that this is not about, a label against label, but it's actually about humans against humans, and we shouldn't be fighting.
Yeah, but however, and sorry that I interrupt you, I'm still a very rational person. I mean, I know that these kids, the Palestinian kids that were killed, their fathers and mothers and family probably want people like me killed. I mean, they are my enemy. I mean, the kids are not my enemy, but the people from the other side, there are a lot of people who are my enemies, and therefore I have all the means to fight back. I'm not a pacifist. I mean, I think this is something that also difference between the attitudes of myself and attitudes of a lot of people who are in the peace making. And I think that in the Middle East, where we live, you can't achieve peace without having, 1, strength, and 2, dignity for yourself. And again, it's like walking in, on a thin line. I mean, on the one hand, you see a dead kid and you want to cry. On the other hand, you know that there is someone over there that want my future kids to die. So, in war, unfortunately, it's harsh, it's brutal, but that's life.
Okay. Ignacio, let's go with your question.
Yes, I have a question. What are the major obstacles of a one-state solution?
First, the one-state solution has not been raised in a serious way, neither by Israelis or Palestinians. And the one-state solution also, many people are afraid. What does it mean? They don't even know about. I mean, it's not. We're not going to. I don't think there's going to be a one-state solution in the classical Western paradigm of things. I think it should be something special from here, but also going to include things from the Torah, things from from old ancient kingdom of Israel should be added. And that's what I think. And I think that also there's so many initiatives that still believe in the two-state solution, pouring a lot of money to promote this failed paradigm. And that's another problem.
Okay, Ignacio, does that clear your question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. We have another question here in the chat from Feli. She says, what aspects does somebody has to have in order to be considered an enemy of yours?
If they want me dead, basically, it's not really, really hard. I mean, we've seen, I'm speaking now from the Israeli Jewish point of view because I'm Israeli Jewish. When I see someone that say, you guys for peace, there's never going to be peace with you. You should be back to where you came from. Even though my ancestry as a Jew, of any Jew, is 3,000, 4,000 years ago from here. People that want to fight and get people like me out, they're my enemy. It's not a very big deal. And I'm speaking also about people that do it physically, either teaching their kids to hate people like me, regardless of the religion or political affiliation. Yeah, basically.
Amazing. Feli, does that clear your question? All good? Awesome. All right, everyone. Do we have any more questions from our audience? All good so far? All right, everyone. So I believe we're already on our time. So let's please thank Mr. Inon for his information, his advice, all of the comments that have been, said so far. I believe it's very important to have this sort of conversations and truly be able to just dig a little bit deeper on the issues that are happening around the world and take a very appropriate stance to whatever the situation might be, for it to end up in a win-win deal for the parts that are involved. So I believe that's super important. Remember, Global Talks is all about, giving you the chance to experience and talk with people that live the stories behind the news. And that's something that I believe has been mentioned a lot through this conversation. What you see on TV is definitely not necessarily what's actually going on there. I think both of the global talks that we've had today have touched quite some very slight and important points to that. And I'd just love to encourage you guys to keep trying to understand this very complex situations if you want to really have an opinion about it. And sometimes remember that not really having an opinion and not really minding your own business might be one of the greatest things you can do for a win-win situation to happen. So, Mr. Inon, I don't know if you want to say any last words, any final words for our audience?
Just want to encourage you guys to, if you want to participate and be part of the solution, be pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian. Don't go into areas of being anti, and also because someone is strong and someone is weak doesn't mean that the weak is right and the strong and the strong is wrong. So again, I want to thank you very much for wanting to understand, to be part of the solution, and God's willing, we're gonna see the solution in our lifetime, hopefully soon. God bless you all.
Hopefully, and God bless you as well. We have one final question from Santiago, and then we'll just close off this conference.
Okay, so before we end, so that I can research a little bit about your activism and all of that, how is the business, I think you could say, or like the movement that you're doing called? Like, could you write it in the chat, please?
Yeah, it's very simple. The Home JLM, in one word. You can find us on Facebook,
especially Instagram and YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome, everyone. Thank you so much for your interest on Mr. Inon's work. Let's please give Mr. Inon a huge round of applause from our part. Digital applause right there, everyone. Thank you so much. It has been great to share with you. It has been great to talk a little bit about the situation and truly have your input on everything that's been said through this meeting. So thank you once again. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you guys around. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, Inon.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.